to get going. Okay. Let's see. All right, fantastic. So welcome everyone to another Inspiration Behind the Stories. I'm here with gorgeous and brilliant Rain Wright. Rain Wright. I always get tongue-tied. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
And we are here to talk about her incredible, I would call it more of like creative nonfiction, yeah?
It's creative nonfiction. I'd say it's probably hybrid because there's a little poetry in there.
Oh, fabulous. Love it. So the title of it is The Language of Mothers. And for the month of March, March being Women's History Month, we actually have the ebook version on sale for 99 cents. So if you're curious, what have you, I have put the link to the Amazon page for this fantastic creative nonfiction piece in the title of our talk. So with all that tongue-tiedness, let's keep going. And I've got to know, what was the moment that made you say, oh my goodness, I have got to write this?
I think that it probably sat in my mind and in my writing process for years, but this idea that stories can heal, that voicing can heal, and also that my mother had been my storyteller, so that the stories that are passed down intergenerationally through women can empower us. I think that was the moment when I decided I needed to write this book.
Oh, wow. Amazing. Now, what first sparked the initial stories?
I think a connection maybe to language and the power of storytelling. And I was in the PhD program at University of Hawaii at Manoa, and I had been doing some writing, a piece called Away with Water, and it was about my mother and her escaping abuse, and those stories being really difficult to tell, but also I think necessary. And that language doesn't have to sit in the stasis of just trauma, but it can be healing. And so the more that I kind of revisited these stories, I thought that they should come to light. And actually the book started with this title, Everything Turns to Light, because my mom would often, talk about kind of the beauty of light in different ways. So I think that was the inspiration that said, I just, I have to continue writing. And it's not always easy to write memoir or creative nonfiction, because there are those moments when you feel like, is this navel gazing, or why do these stories matter? But they do matter. And I think that women's voices matter. So I wrote, and it became my dissertation, which then eventually became my book, The Language of Mothers.
Brilliant. Now, why should we consider this important now?
Well, I think that it's essential to read women's stories, and it is Women's History Month. But I think these stories are always essential because they are underrepresented, represented. Women's voices aren't always heard, and women's stories aren't always believed. And just because the topic is vulnerable, or it hedges on domestic violence or mental health, doesn't mean that the language, the storytelling can't be beautiful. And I do have to say that the stories that stay with me the most are these ones that empower, that make us feel like we're hearing some of these really true aspects of what it means to be human. And I mean, so again, women's stories matter.
Oh, stunning. Were there, I mean, you touched upon a lot of different aspects, but were there any specific questions that you were really obsessed with answering or exploring while you were writing?
Yes. And what stories are mine to tell? Because when we write about ourselves, we write about the other people in our lives. So there's always ethical considerations. So there were those questions like, what stories are mine to tell? How do I tell them? How do, I honor the women in my life, which was my mother, but also my daughters. So I think that is probably where I started, right? What are my stories to tell? And I didn't want to limit myself, but I also wanted to go into the project with these kind of autobiographical, ethical considerations and make sure that I was doing the stories justice, um, and always honoring the people that I love.
Oh, gorgeous. Now, taking 1,000 steps back, who is this memoir about? Like, what is the narrative arc that we're following along with the language of mothers?
So the story is purposefully fragmented, and as I say, there's creative nonfiction and there's poetry, and I did that purposefully, because the story is about my mother escaping my biological father and abuse in Northern California, Humboldt, California. And she escaped with me and my brother and my younger sister by packing our stuff and hiding in the bushes, and then staying with friends and kind of going through, I guess, a system of people to get us away from my biological father.
Mhm.
And so it's her story of escape. So it is a story that women can leave. There is an after of the abuse, but then it connects to my story, being a young teenage mother and having 3 children and finding myself in an abusive relationship and how I escaped. And from that, again, the reason that I thought that creative nonfiction and poetry kind of married so well in this is that when it does have those poetic moments, it's done purposefully, kind of again to show that language can press forward beyond trauma. Because there is that kind of argument that how can it represent trauma on the page, right? And so I'm kind of insisting that the language can move beyond trauma and show healing. So again, that idea of a thread of women being storytellers, but being women who left abuse and not only left, but created art. My mother was an artist, and, I write. And then there's my daughters. So part of the negotiation of this book is if I stayed too long in a home and with it was filled with abuse, and what did my daughters suffer? Because they did have a lot of mental health struggles that they had to overcome. And that is part of the story too, that I didn't want to be stigmatized or remain in the dark. I wanted us to be able to say that, we're a family of powerful women, and having mental health struggles is nothing to be ashamed of. So I had their permission to write these stories.
Oh, brilliant. That's fabulous. Now, I mean, well, I think you've already touched upon this, but what's at stake if things go wrong? And I'd like you to explore for you, for your mother, as well as for your daughters, if that's okay.
I think there's different ways to look at it. I mean, I think that what would happen if it went wrong with us escaping or not leaving, because there's always that thought in my mind, kind of like, what if there's a timeline when my mother didn't escape, or what if there's a timeline when I didn't escape, and and I was still kind of stuck in that. And I think that the outcomes would have been much different. I don't think I would be here, having earned my PhD, having written a book. I think that is why it's so necessary to see that these stories, kind of domestic violence, mental health, it's not just like a story of stagnation that you can't leave.
Mm.
But there's also this idea of what could go wrong in the writing process, because what could go wrong is I don't represent the stories well, that I don't honor these women, young women. I love my daughters. These women, I love my mother, who passed away when I was in my 20s. Because there's this idea of representing on the page can almost become like pornographic witnessing, where you're re-traumatizing people when you write about it. So again, and that's a term, I can't remember who coined that term. It will probably come to me. But again, and often when women witness, they're not believed. And we see this is very prevalent, right? They're not believed. So all of that could have gone wrong. But I'm sitting here, and my book celebrated its birthday on February 12th of this year. Its first year birthday. And I think from the reception that I'm getting, that it's out there and it's doing work. And I think that's what any writer hopes, right?
Oh, absolutely. The whole reason that we exist, that Running Wild exists, is because of witnessing so many voices that were not being represented, and not being given a chance to be explored. And in that, because this is our 10-year anniversary as well.
Oh, yes, that's right. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I think along the same lines of what you're talking about, it's in those moments when people reach out and say, I read this story about this memoir about a woman who had brain cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And, my significant other or my best friend or whomever, was exploring a very similar, and I didn't understand the trauma that she was going through, and I didn't understand the complexity, and this made me connect to her or him like I didn't understand I needed.
Yeah.
And it's that type of, those kinds of connections. And honestly, selfishly, even when I'll get emails from librarians saying, I bought this for myself and I loved it so much I put it in our library and it's been checked out. Right? I adore that. Like I just, to me,
I love librarians. Yeah.
I know. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, definitely. And finding a home for hybrid work, even though I think the genre is becoming more popular. But when you're trying to do something else, like kind of break the boundary of a genre, finding a home for your piece isn't always easy. So I'm so happy that my book found a home at Running Wild.
And we're absolutely thrilled to have you as a part of our community. Absolutely. What kind of an emotional ride do you feel as though readers should expect as they explore this creative nonfiction?
I've had readers reach out and say different things. So maybe I'll just kind of think about what people have told me. I had a woman reach out and she had lost her mother. And so reading The Language of Mothers after her mother had just died, I guess it was cathartic for her, but it was also a way for her to think about, how she could honor her own mother. So she made her whole family read the book, and I loved that. And then let's see, just people saying that, I had one person say, I just finished it, and now what am I going to do? What am I going to read now? So I feel like they connected with it
Mm,
again. Women's. And this was a young man, and I thought that that was really cool.
mm,
Because again, thinking about when you're a writer, you think about who is my audience, right? And you want to think, well, many people should pick this up. But I guess, I mean, realistically, I thought, well, it says the language of mothers, and I don't want people to be afraid of that because, I think that understanding women's stories is valuable for anybody.
mm,
And I don't think that I represented trauma or in an overly dramatic way. So I would think that anybody picking this up, I hope would appreciate kind of the lyric in it. And
mm,
again, the interrogation of self. There's kind of a lot of those really important kind of memoir or autobiographical moves that we can make as writers. They're really essential, that reflective tone.
mm,
Um, so I think, again, because it's fragmented, I can't really say what is the narrative arc other than saying, that maybe it is the importance of storytelling, of
mm.
leaving. Maybe when they approach it, they can, you know, hopefully fall in love with the language. I mean, it is the language of mothers. I don't know. Does that kind of answer
Yeah, no, it absolutely
it?
does. It absolutely does. Um, Now this does explore, multiple lives within your life.
Hmm.
What did you find to be the hardest to actually write?
um, I think this kind of engaging with my daughter's mental health struggles.
Mm,
Um, and I guess people who are going to read it will soon find it out. So my eldest did, attempt suicide, and my youngest struggled with anorexia, and then my middle was caught
mm,
between these very two large stories. So how to approach writing about their stories, but leaving the boundary of what is theirs, and writing about it from a mother's perspective, but kind of honoring them. And in a lot of ways, there was kind of some apologies in it because when I was growing up, we women were very hard on our bodies. We were never enough or always too much. We said too much. Our bodies were too large or too small. And I had kind of carried that. And I don't know if my children kind of picked up on that women are never enough kind of language from me. So one of
mm,
the first things I really had to do was for my eldest apologize for keeping her in um, a home that was abusive for too long. And some people might say, well, you were young, you didn't have any money, you didn't have any way to escape. But I think that there's still power in working through that with my daughters. Like, I see your story, I see your struggles, and I want to apologize um, for whatever part I played in it. And I think that's important for mothers to kind of humble themselves and learn from their children too. And again, for my youngest to kind of learn the language of loving my body enough to show her that it's powerful, um, that it's gotten me through so much, that, that we are our minds and our bodies. We're connected, right? And we
mm,
have to know that there's not that kind of Cartesians, I think, therefore I am. Our stories are in our bodies too, and that trying to help her find her way to loving all my daughters. Again, because my middle was kind of caught as I'm going to be perfect because my sisters have these two large stories. So writing about that, but um, first of all, removing their names from it. So they're in this book. They're my daughter, my eldest, my middle, my youngest. Asking them permission about what I could write about, saying that there should be no stigma in mental health, and understanding that there's, again, really something beautiful about us loving each other so much that we can allow each other to do art, me writing, or do what they need to do to live in this world that can't always be beautiful, but find a way to beauty.
Oh, gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. Now I think you actually already touched on this a little bit, but again, if you would expand, where were you when in your life when you were actually physically writing this memoir of sorts?
Physically, like physically, where in Hawaii?
Sure.
I was in Kaneohe for part of the time, which is just surrounded by the most beautiful Ko'olau Mountains.
Mm.
And I remember going to bed one night and I kind of just asked the universe, like, how do I raise strong daughters? How do I do it? And when I was dreaming, the Ko'olau Mountains came to me and they said, we are the grandmothers and we lay our bodies bare.
Mm.
And I thought, oh, that's kind of beautiful. So I had to wake up the next morning and write about that, of course.
Of course.
But then I was studying for my PhD, and this became my dissertation. And I moved to Kaimuki, which is a small neighborhood on the outskirts of Honolulu. And I love Kaimuki. It's not as dramatically beautiful as Kaneohe, but it's close to the university. And I found it really safe. And I think that anybody who has been in any kind of traumatic, and for me it was domestic abuse, but when you find those places where you feel safe,
Mm-hmm.
I think that your art, if it's writing, painting, or whatever, can really feel like it can come forth a little bit more. So again, I think those two places were really instrumental. But then my childhood growing up on Big Island and Honaunau plays a significant role in this book too, because we are the places that we are from too. Those landscapes kind of inform who we are as people too. So the Ko'olau Mountains, I think they definitely told me it's okay to be a strong woman and just, lay your body out there. But Honaunau is, I think, such a kind of deep central part of who I am. And it's where my mother did a lot of her art. But place is important. I actually, when I teach a lot of place-based stuff and tell students how important it is to understand and know the places where you live and are from.
Mm. Ah, gorgeous. Now, do you feel as though writing this and really getting this on the page changed you in some way? And if so, how?
I think I'm still discovering the how. I think that it was such a process, and sometimes I'll pick it up, like I've gone to readings and be reading it and think, oh, this does matter. Because again, that self-doubt, I think for any writer will kind of creep in. But when you write creative nonfiction, autobiography, memoir, life writing, it kind of comes into your mind like, why is this important? But maybe it's okay to kind of grapple with that too. Where, autobiography used to be, great men writing about their great lives, but now it's expanded over the last 30, 40 years to include voices that were often marginalized. I think that this genre is really important. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. What was the question?
Oh, no, I'm fine. So the question was, how do you feel as though this may have changed you?
So the day that the book came out, I actually canceled class because I was thinking, I don't know how I'll feel. And there are a lot of feelings when your book comes out that you're not even like, that I wasn't necessarily anticipating. There was a lot of, did I, change names enough, maybe change a few locations enough to give people kind of, the anonymity they needed or pay respect. But holding it and I think, seeing it and um, just to kind of go back to this idea of my mother being my storyteller. When
Mm.
she was, passing away, I promised her that I would write a book. And because, she would always say, you have to write, you have to write. So again, it kind of felt like I was fulfilling something by doing it, something that just still feels kind of overwhelming and wonderful. And yeah, I think that it's amazing, to feel all those emotions.
Oh, fabulous. Now, what do you feel may have surprised you the most while you were writing it?
Um, what surprised me the most? Um, I think that I don't think this surprised me, but maybe I don't know that the word is surprised is enough, but I think that going back to this idea that sometimes people view writers as like being in this dark room, kind of
Mm.
typing away, but writers need community.
Mm.
And so it wasn't surprising that I had, so many wonderful people show up to either, read my work while it was in progress, not just my, dissertation committee, but friends, um, and, other writers who could offer support.
Mm.
So I think that I kind of want to overturn that word surprise
Okay.
and just kind of remind people that writers need community. And it's wonderful because we read each other's work, we support each other, and I love the word surprise, and I think that there's something kind of beautiful in there.
Mm.
Um, that can tie to community, like it being a reminder that community and writing communities are so generous and can kind of support each other so well as we put books out in the world that we think should be out in the world.
Mm. Oh my gosh, gorgeous. Now, you did mention that you explored multiple um, lives, basically. Was there any character, any individual that you really had a hard time uh, getting into?
Um, no, I think that what I did purposefully in this book, again, it's, memoir, creative nonfiction, is I left my children's father, who I was in the abusive relationship, I left his name out.
Mm.
So if we're talking about character and why I did that, because it wasn't his story and his name didn't need to be in there. And names are powerful, right? So I wanted him, and maybe it was difficult to think about how to approach it,
Mm-hmm.
but I wanted him just to be kind of a fringe person who had, yes, done these things, but also not to be named, not be his story, not to have a voice interjecting in here, because it's supposed to be about, you know, these powerful women who have influenced me, whether they were my mother, my grandmother, his mother. I wrote about her. And she always told me, you'll outgrow him. And when you're young, you don't understand that. But then again, women are trying to guide you. And then my daughters. So he was purposefully, again, not named. And I guess I just go back to being really careful writing about my daughters and
Mm-hmm.
making sure that it was just done to show how magnificent they are, but also to be really gentle and careful.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always a negotiation with me bringing them into my stories. So maybe that's difficult. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that I could see that. I could totally see that. Um, among all of these incredible narratives. Is there anything that almost didn't make it into the book, and why did you decide to keep it?
um, it's funny because I had all these threads of story, like I said, and they're not necessarily, they're connected, but they're connected with a fragmented kind of sense purposefully to
Mhm.
show kind of that, if you've experienced trauma, trauma theory says that you won't be able to have access to those memories. So I'm kind of pushing back against that, saying, so I'm fragmenting them, but I'm saying here they are and they're vivid. But I had
Mhm.
all of these kind of threads, and for some reason I had left quite a few out. But then through the editing process, I think I, brought several of them back in. And one of them that I think springs to mind now is this stories. I think it's called Hair Stories. But it's this story of my daughters always wanting to cut their hair when they were little, and me saying, grow your hair long. And I'm not sure why, but there was always this kind of fearful dream that came to me where they're kind of sliding over the um, edge of a cliff, and I can only catch them by their hair. So lots of deep psychological stuff going on there. But in the dream, I mean, in the piece, I tell them, let's reimagine that childhood home. Go ahead, cut the world up, cut your hair, cut anything you want. We're going to, cut up this world. So
Mhm.
that almost didn't make it in. But then I kind of thought, why? That should be there.
Oh, absolutely. That should absolutely be there. Who do you feel will be the most engaged? Who will fall the hardest for this book?
Um, I hope that people kind of explore beyond this idea of it just being for mothers, even though it says it's the language of mothers.
Mm.
And I really hope that young women, um, either thinking about how they want to pay tribute to their mother, or young women who are thinking about, their maybe story. How do I want to say that? I want them to know that there is a beyond abuse, there
Mm.
is an after. And I hope that they find this book. Maybe there are people struggling with mental health, and maybe they can see that mental health shouldn't be stigmatized, that there is, an after the struggle too.
Mhm.
And, but also an acceptance. Like, if this is the mental health, condition I have, then how do I learn to love myself and be in this world with that struggle? So I hope they find this book. But I mean, it would be good if lots of people found the book. I would.
Absolutely. Is there any aspect of this that readers have described to you that they said, "Oh, I just completely was not expecting this"?
um, there were, well, it's really lovely. Again, there were a lot of people who I grew up with on Big Island who read it, and they're like, "Oh,
Mhm.
it's like you're telling my story. I remember all of these places." And I guess, and then there are, people who said, it just made me cry so much. And it makes me cry when I read some of it because, again, I'm writing about my mother or difficult times, but it's kind of I don't know, a release in not a bad cry, if that makes
Mhm.
sense.
Mhm.
So I kind of had to think, oh, okay, I'm making people cry. That doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. But I really do appreciate when people give me feedback and find something in my book. I think that's wonderful. That's beautiful, right? When they find something there, and they take the time um, to either write in those little charming notes, and say your book did something good for me.
Mm. Stunning. Absolutely. If someone reads, like, let's say the first 20 pages or so, what keeps them going?
Um, the first part of it really kind of frames me and my daughter's story. It's about, you know, and, I'm thinking about the first 20 pages. And I think that it will not only engage people who love like poetry or lyrical language, but I think that they will be engaged because, again, it's saying that these stories are okay to tell. And, I'm not going to be ashamed of these stories. And I am going to show you the beauty of storytelling, and even storytelling that's difficult. And I mean, for me, when I've come away from reading so many memoirs that were just like, oh, that made me feel on so many levels. And I still think about those books. And I hope I'm doing some of that work for other people.
Oh, absolutely. Do you feel as though there's a specific mood or approach that someone should be entering when they first begin the memoir?
Specific mood. It's not a comedy. It's not fiction. So maybe understanding that, understanding that there's a lot of, again, that kind of reflective voice. I love gardening, so maybe after they've done some gardening or walking or done a hike and or gotten to the beach and they want to just kind of be even more introspective and think about, um, you know, uh, engaging in hopefully a very captivating story. Maybe, yeah.
And before we go to the one sentence of why to pick up this book, is there anything else that we should leave our viewers with? Anything else that you would like to explore?
I want to just say that, we can, it's very necessary to have like February is as Black History Month. It's also Alala Hawaiʻi, Hawaiian Language Month, and then March is Women's History Month, because those stories are often marginalized. But I want us to remember that these stories should be heard all year, round. Yeah, these histories,
Absolutely.
and there's so much harm done to, you know, to women who aren't believed. So maybe just pick up a book by a woman. And I know Running Wild has a lot of books by women, so explore the catalog, read widely, um, widely and wildly, cross genres, and I just think it's essential to read. Read. I mean, I tell my students, they're like, I don't read much anymore. I like anime. And I said, but you're still reading. Just read. Read whatever you can get your hands onto. Read.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In one sentence, why should someone pick up this book?
Again, The Language of Mothers is a hybrid work of essays and poetries that pushes back against harmful narratives about women, and it is storytelling about escaping, about, this is a very long sentence, about escaping, about the beauty of deep relationships with mothers and daughters. And it kind of frames or focuses the reader on the idea of storytelling as healing.
Oh, gorgeous. And with that, I just want to remind everyone, The Language of Mothers can be found anywhere ebook, paperback, audiobook are sold. And for the month of March, the ebook is on sale for 99 cents. And with that, Rain, thank you again for just writing such a stunning piece and spending your time with us. So appreciated.
Thank you so much.